Let me tell you something people rarely admit. Sometimes, loving someone means hiding the truth from them. My name is Natalie. I'm 28 now. And 3 years ago, I made a choice I believed was the smartest decision of my life. I buried a secret so deep that I almost convinced myself it never happened. Everyone around me thinks I'm this reformed party girl who turned her life around, met the perfect man, and settled down into a wholesome, quiet marriage. But that's far from the truth. The reality behind that picture-perfect story is a lot messier. I met Aaron at work about 4 years ago. He seemed to be everything I thought I wanted at the time. Stable, predictable, dependable. He worked in IT, owned a small house in the suburbs, had a rescue dog, and actually wanted commitment, unlike the string of flaky, immature guys I dated before him. He wasn't exciting, but he was safe. The type of guy who'd never cheat because he was too busy paying bills and reminding you to schedule your dental cleanings. Husband material, right? We got engaged after just 8 months of dating. Honestly, I wasn't swept off my feet or anything. It was more like I was worn down from dating disasters. He seemed like a safe bet. A man who would show up when I needed him, make life easier, not harder. But then, 3 months before our wedding, everything went off the rails. There was this guy, Lucas, from another branch of our company. We'd been casually flirting over email for a few months. Nothing serious. Just the kind of banter that makes boring office days feel a little more alive. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But then we met in person at a work conference. One night after the group dinner, we ended up at the hotel bar. We were drinking, talking, laughing way too easily. Felt electric. And at some point I convinced myself it was harmless. Aaron would never even think to question me about something like this. He trusted me completely. One drink led to another. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up in Lucas's hotel bed the following morning. I didn't even feel guilty at first. I just felt angry at myself for being so sloppy. The guilt only hit later, when I realized I could lose everything I'd built with Aaron if the truth ever got out. That morning, while Lucas was still sleeping, I made a decision that changed everything. I decided it never happened. I got dressed, left his room, went back to mine, took a long shower and caught my flight home. I acted like it was just another conference trip. I stopped drinking completely afterward, told Aaron I was doing it for my health, and I started therapy. Not because I felt guilty about the cheating itself, but because I needed to make sure I never got caught or landed in that situation again. My therapist, funny enough, actually helped me justify it. She told me that if it truly was a one-time mistake, and I'd taken steps to prevent it from happening again, telling Aaron would only needlessly hurt him. I clung to that logic. Why destroy his peace of mind over something meaningless that would never happen again? So I buried it. I threw myself into being the perfect fiancée, then the perfect wife. Cooked his favorite meals. Kept our house spotless. I became his biggest cheerleader, supporting his hobbies, remembering every little detail about his day. For 3 years I built a beautiful life on top of that secret. And I convinced myself that I'd handled the situation perfectly. Aaron never suspected a thing. Why would he? I wasn't some serial cheater. I'd made one mistake under unusual circumstances and then worked every day to make sure it never happened again. People always say honesty is the best policy, but they never talk about situations like this, where telling the truth only creates unnecessary pain. In time, I even believed my own narrative. I convinced myself that the woman who'd cheated wasn't the real me. She was a reckless, drunk version of me. Someone who didn't count. I avoided Lucas completely after that night. He worked in a different city most of the time, and our departments didn't overlap much. It was easy to pretend he didn't exist. Until last week. That's when the carefully constructed world I'd built started to collapse. Aaron had gone to work like usual, and I was working from home in my pajamas when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Who has time for spam calls? But something told me to pick up. The voice on the other end was soft, trembling. She introduced herself as Claudia, Lucas's wife. My stomach dropped. She asked if I was Natalie and if I knew Lucas from work. I played it cool, acted surprised, said we worked at the same company but barely knew each other. Then she dropped the bomb. She said Lucas had been cheating on her for years, with multiple women from work trips and conferences, and she'd finally had enough. She'd given him an ultimatum: confess everything to every spouse involved, or she'd divorce him and take half of everything, including his prized collection of vintage cars. Lucas chose to confess. Claudia then listed off dates and places like she had a detailed dossier. And when she mentioned the conference from 3 years ago, down to the exact hotel and even what I'd worn to the dinner that night, I felt my blood turn cold. Lucas had apparently kept records of every affair. Notes, emails, even photos. Claudia wasn't calling to blame me or start drama. She was giving me a warning. She told me Lucas was calling Aaron that evening to confess everything. She said she was tired of being the only one living with the truth, while everyone else enjoyed their fake happy marriages. I begged her to reconsider. I told her it was ancient history, that nobody would benefit from dragging it back up. But she wasn't having it. Everyone deserves to know who they're really married to, she said before hanging up. I spent the entire afternoon panicking. Should I tell Aaron first to soften the blow? Should I call Lucas and beg him to keep quiet? Mostly I was furious. Furious that my life was about to be destroyed by someone else's mess. Furious that this woman thought she could bulldoze her way into my marriage and blow up everything I'd built. When Aaron came home that night, I expected the worst, but he was completely normal. We had dinner, watched TV, went to bed. I started to think maybe Lucas had chickened out. But the next morning, Aaron's phone rang during breakfast. I watched the color drain from his face as he listened silently. When he hung up, he stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. He asked if there was anything I wanted to tell him about a business trip 3 years ago. Froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. I tried to play dumb, but it was pointless. He knew. I broke down right there in the kitchen. Not from guilt, more from sheer frustration that everything I'd managed so carefully was crumbling. I confessed. I told him it was a drunken, meaningless mistake. That I'd spent every day since working to be a better wife. That I'd never even considered doing something like that again. But Aaron wasn't interested in apologies or explanations. He wanted details. Dates, times, everything. Then he asked the same question over and over. Why didn't you tell me before we got married? I tried to explain that I was protecting him. That confessing would have served no purpose but to hurt him. I reminded him I'd changed everything about myself since then. That I'd devoted myself to him in every way. But none of it mattered to him. He kept saying the same thing. I don't know who you are anymore. That night, he packed a bag and said he was staying at his cousin's place until he figured out what to do. I told him he was overreacting. Plenty of couples survive things like this. But he wouldn't listen. Over the next few days, he barely responded to my messages. When he finally came home, he wasn't the same man. Cold, distant, suspicious. He'd spent his time away digging through everything. Our emails, photos, even old work calendars. He found our emails from before the conference. Innocent exchanges with a little harmless joking, but nothing explicit. Still, he acted like it was proof of some grand affair. He even called Claudia again. Behind my back. She painted me as just another notch on Lucas's belt, like I was some willing accomplice in his long list of affairs. Aaron was obsessed. He started therapy but came home parroting words like betrayal, trauma, and emotional manipulation. His therapist apparently told him the lying was worse than the cheating because it meant our marriage had been a lie from day one. That infuriated me. I wasn't manipulating anyone. I was protecting him. There's a difference. But nobody seemed to care about the difference. Aaron ignored everything good I'd done for our marriage. Every sacrifice, every act of devotion, because of one night I barely remembered. Weeks passed. He kept sleeping in the guest room, questioning me constantly, treating me like I was some criminal in my own home. Finally, I'd had enough. I gave him an ultimatum. Either forgive me and work on rebuilding our marriage, or divorce me and be done with it. He stunned me with his response. He said he'd only consider staying if I quit my job. He wanted me to completely leave the company, to erase every trace of connection to Lucas. Even though I hadn't seen or spoken to Lucas in years. Even though I'd built my entire career there. That's where we're at now, stuck in this ridiculous standoff. Me holding the line, refusing to throw away everything I've worked for. Him treating me like I'm some ticking time bomb, as if I'll explode at any moment. And the worst part. Deep down I know I was a good wife. I know I was protecting him, not deceiving him. But in Aaron's eyes, none of that matters anymore. Not a single thing.